And here he is, man, Mr. 4-0.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, bro.
I appreciate it, Chief. Fresh off of number 40.
Welcome to the club, the big boy club.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you very much. Although I've been a big boy my whole life.
Facts. We talked about that before we got on air.
Indeed.
So what was it like? I mean, what do you feel like now that you're 40?
As you know, I'm on this, the professional journey, right? But it's a sense of refinement in regard to.
That's a good word.
Here's what I am going to participate in. Here's what I do have the bandwidth for. Here's what is important to me. And not that I didn't already have priorities. I'm married with a child, but here's what I will put energy into, and then everything else is just to the side.
Yeah.
And it gets more and more refined by the day. We had a birthday dinner and stuff, and people at the table were asking me, and shout out to everybody who came to the birthday dinner. We went to Del Frisco's, by the way. You know
where I'm at on that.
It's always a win, right?
Yeah, it's definitely a win.
Shout out to my sister Brittany Reddick. She asked me, she's like, well, Brody, how does it feel? And at the time, like you don't wake up like, oh, I feel 40, but you just have an even deeper understanding of who's important, what's important, and everything else is just like, hey, it's up for consideration. I put it on the shelf.
Yeah.
We're obviously all trying to get somewhere. And you turn 40, and you just refinement and reflection in the sense of,
ooh, that's so good.
Yeah, I know. You asked. I told you I'd follow you. You have an understanding of who has helped you just to get to this point, the people that have invested in you, family and friends and professional colleagues and all that stuff, and you just have a deeper understanding.
It becomes more clear.
That's the word. Clarity. Yeah, clarity. I mean, you know me. You know it's hard to make me upset. Like, it's very rare that you be like, where we've been on the phone, be like, hey, I don't like that dude. Yeah. There's only like one.
I got something for you off air when we get done.
Exactly. And I'll be damned. Somebody called me the other day, and I almost went there, and I thought, wait a minute, nope, because one, you don't get me off my square that quick, but two, like, you need me, is what I'm saying to myself as this guy's on the phone talking. It's like, you need me way more than I need you. And I talked myself off the ledge because I was getting ready to go. I was getting ready to go.
For you to do that, that's a lot.
Yeah, you got to earn that. You got to earn for me to be like, okay, I'm upset. Yeah. Like, you got to work to get to that point. He did the work.
So speaking of doing the work, obviously the first quarter of the year, I'm really heavy in on myself, and we're going to get more into kind of like the self-inventory and understanding who you are, where you want to be, and the gap that exists and all that fun stuff. But, we've talked a lot about on the show about books and, like, what you're reading, what you're filling your mind with. And I think that is so important.
Ooh, yes, it is.
So I'm curious, what are you reading right now?
I just finished, like 4 days ago, Young Jeezy's book, Adversity for Sale, You Gotta Believe. I'm a fan of the music, but the story is awesome. You look at where he is now, a true CEO mindset, and it plays out in the book. I mean, it started from scratch. Like, it's really, if you see where he is today and then you read the book, it makes sense.
Yeah,
it makes sense. Part of it is it's born out of a refusal, like, come hell or high water, I will do whatever is necessary in order for me to not have to struggle anymore. In whatever avenue, whatever road I got to travel to get to the other side, to where I don't have to worry about certain things anymore, like, I'm willing to do it. Like, the true definition of, I'm putting all my cards on the table. I'm all in at every turn.
It's interesting because you gave me Rich Paul's book, which I read, which I thought was a good book, and probably synonymous to Jeezy's book too. But I'm reading, and it's interesting, we got all these entertainers. I'm actually reading 50's book. I think it was his first book, Hustle Harder, Hustle Smarter, and maybe his second book, because I know he's written two. But it's, I'm not going to divulge what the book is about or anything like that, but I got to give a lot of props and a lot of respect to 50 on how he is navigating these new waters. A lot of times we talk about, you and your professional endeavors and navigating uncharted waters, et cetera. But what I want to really talk with you about today is when you look at someone like 50 who brought us, you know, in the early 2000s, just some of the best bangers that are out there, right? Like In the Club and
that catalog will forever make money.
Yeah, 100%, right? And what he's done in the industry, but he's not the same dude that he was in circa 2000 or worse yet, in late 90s, right? And same thing with Jeezy and all these people. Like you, it's interesting because you're 40, I'm 42. As you kind of get older, you know, priorities change, right? As it should, right? Like we should all graduate throughout life, but it really got me to thinking about pivoting, right? And I know that's something that we kind of talked about a handful of times in spots on the show, but I really wanted to just kind of focus on that today. Welcome back to the Vision Lab podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Cuffey, alongside my co-host, Mr. Ryan Mosley. Vision Lab is the official growth mindset for all visionaries worldwide, and we're showing mad love to the cigar industry. It's here in the Vision Lab where we uncover people's visions and dreams and how those dreams actually come into reality. Folks, it's all about tapping into and becoming the absolute best versions of ourselves through self-discovery, self-examination, and self-actualization. Mo, I'm excited because we get a chance to just chop it up today. I know we talked about at the end of 2023, just having, you know, more me and you conversations as we kind of look at this sunset season, if you will, right? And in that, you know, this is a growth mindset show, and we've had a number of amazing guests that have done some amazing things in their everyday professional lives as well as their personal walk. And I've heard you say a couple of times, you know, when do you know when it's right to pivot? And, you know, everybody, not that there's a magic or silver bullet that can answer that question, right? It's always going to be, you know, what the circumstances are. But as I'm actually listening to the 50 book, but as I'm listening to it, and I just got to thinking about who that dude was when he was at his height, right? As a rapper, right? And then all of a sudden, dude is promoting vitamin water, and he's doing other like business dealings that a lot of people don't even realize. The growth, the maturity, the mindset that he has displayed amongst many other, you know, entertainers, entrepreneurs, etc. There's just this overwhelming idea that I cannot always do the same thing that I did to get here, right? So that really got me to thinking about your question about like when do we know it's right, you know, the right time to pivot. And then I think obviously if you know you're bumping your head up against the wall, right? It doesn't make sense to continue to do that and be stubborn. And I'm gonna give you a great example. I'm 5'11". Right now I'm about 224-ish. I've always been built for speed and quickness, right? I've never been a distance type runner. Well, I no longer play football for like the last 20 years, golly, that's a long time. 20 years. Wow. Anyways, but I hadn't played like competitively in 20 plus years. But you still want to be active. You still want to be in shape. Obviously, we all know the health benefits from that. So I run, and that's what I enjoy doing, right? But I'm not running at the same pace that I was when I was 19, 20 years old, right? And I'm also known to kind of start and stop and like everybody else, right? You know, I get into a groove and I'm going for 2 or 3 months, and then all of a sudden it's 5 months later and I haven't done anything. So I say that to say, bro, I'm out here, you know, been running about 3 miles a day. And last week, my heel started really hurting, right? Now, folks, visionaries, don't do what I do. I just get out there and I go run, right? No stretching, no active stretching or anything like that. Totally big mistake on my end. But I'll get out there and I'll go about 3 miles, right? And I'm doing this for weeks on end, and my heel's like really developing this pain. And I'm one of those people that if I start the run,
you're gonna finish
it. I have to finish it, and there's no stopping, right? And that's always been my mindset. But is that the right mindset, right? That stubborn bulldozer mentality, like I'm gonna do it regardless, because I could be jeopardizing something long term, right? That I don't have the ability to foresee right now. So it's so interesting that this word is kind of permeating through my life, and the word is pivot, right? Because I didn't necessarily get off the track, but what I decided to do was do it in stages or intervals, right? So I would run, a quarter of a mile, walk 5 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever it is, right? Whatever the cadence or pace that I did. And I started to think about that and how it's analogous to life, right? How often do you, me, others, how often do we want to go down a specific road? And that's what we want to do, and that's cool. But we're beating our head against the wall when all we have to do is slightly pivot and the road is clear, right? Or maybe it's not with as many impediments, right, that we see. And so I just wanted to chop it up with you today about that, bro, and kind of get your thoughts and see, what you're thinking about that.
I think when I hear the word pivot, I think about adjusting. I think about improvising, and me, a lot of it is not necessarily by the seat of my pants, but having to do it on the fly. Because as you and I both know, like there's no, especially in life, there's no, outside the Bible, there's no manual, because everyone's got their own independent and specified situations. And so the first thing when I think about pivot or adjusting, all falls under that same umbrella is, one, I always talk about it. You got to have the stomach or the internal mechanism, not even to the point where you realize like, okay, I have to pivot, but do you actually have the stomach to pivot, to actually adjust? Because there's some people who just get stuck and it's like, this is all I can do. And they for various amounts of reasons, I'm sure they can't see a different way of doing it because this is all that's been ingrained in them or whatnot.
Well, what do I always talk to you about? We're all products of our environment, experiences, and exposures, right? And so if you've only been able to see things a certain way, it's because you're limited to that. Now, obviously, you got people that are in all types of walks of life that started down a particular road, pivoted, and they're still going on that same road, right? And I'm also kind of curious, do you think like pivot means an admission of failure to a degree?
No. The only admission of failure is quitting.
Facts, big facts.
That's the only admission of failure. Pivoting is just, and we talked about it, it's like, okay, the end goal might remain the same, but pivot might just be, let's adjust our strategy.
Yeah.
Or let's adjust our path. We're still trying to get to the same place, but the road we started out on, like you just said, the road we're down, there might be construction down the way, and we don't know until we get up on the road is closed sign.
Right,
so,
right.
Okay, back up a hair and find an alternative route. That's the word I use for we start. Find the alternative route to get to said destination. And it's not quitting. We just got to find a different way.
Right, and I think that's super important to highlight, because I think a lot of times, let's use the example that we talked about with me running, right? I could be stubborn, and down the road is this construction that I can't even get past, right? It's a detour that I wouldn't be able to get past. But if I want to be stubborn and keep going down that road, now I'm ass out. You know what I mean? But if I would have just taken the time to realize, hey, I need to pivot and go a different direction, or in my situation with the heel spur or whatever, maybe I put my foot in real peril by being stubborn. So I think that it is prudent and quite frankly smart to learn how to pivot, right? And it's not an admission of failure. Like I said, we're talking about like 50 and all these people, right? That are no longer that same gangster dude, because they have obviously a lot more to risk.
Well, sidebar real quick. They still are that, but it's refinement and it's the adjusting of like, okay, I don't have to take the same path or use the same methods I did when I first started versus
Exactly
where
right.
I am now.
Exactly right.
They're still very much the same people. Like I just finished Jeezy's book like 4 days ago, and the core of who he is still that same person today.
Yeah.
The morals and principles and his inner constitution, he still lives by it.
Well, it's exactly what you said. It's the principles by which he lives.
Yeah. He still lives and operates by it, but he also understands that I'm in a different room now. So while I can still govern myself and conduct business how I want to conduct business with the same sense of morals and integrity, There's just a different way to do things now, given the position that I hold. And 50's the same way. Like you said it, like he's got his thumb on Ja, and he ain't never letting him off the mat.
Never.
Now he's gonna go about doing it a different way versus when he first showed up, when he first learned who 50 Cent was. But that guy who is foot on neck at all time, he's still that guy.
You know, a lot of this has to do with, and we talk about this a lot on our show, and it's doing the work on yourself, understanding where you are within your life, right, against where you want to go. And I think it starts with that self-inventory.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I don't care if you're 50, if you're Cuff, if you're Mo, whatever. Like, you got to know, I can't continue to do the same things, right? Forever. Like, it's got to change. It's got to evolve. It's got to grow, right? But at the same time, it doesn't mean that I'm off the same direction that I'm heading, right?
Yeah, I think it's in like everything in life, like it's some semblance of balance. Because I saw an interview the other day with Busta Rhymes, of all people, and he was talking about this very thing in regards to like not quitting and not giving up. He's like, there are sometimes you have to change and adjust. He said, but other times, he said, if you are really just lock, stock, and barrel in regards to what you believe and what you're trying to get done, he said sometimes you gotta be borderline delusional. He said it might get to a point where you're like, where everyone else around you is like, man, that dude's crazy. He said, but then it works, and then all of a sudden you become a genius. He's like, but the overarching theme of it all was, you got to be self-aware enough to realize, when have I crossed the line of, okay, I'm literally out here on my own, and if this works, I'm gonna be hailed as a genius, versus, and to what I was saying earlier, do you have the stomach to be out there on an island by yourself? If you got the stomach to go out there on your own and be in a boat and just you and a paddle, and you get there when you get there, cool, by all means, do it. I mean, fortune favors the bold, you know, necessity being the mother of invention, like all that stuff, to where, you know, a random person in the history of the world has decided, I'm going out. What our guy David Goggins talks about all the time, like, you got to be willing to go out on the edge. You got to be willing to go where no one else is willing to go sometimes.
Yeah, and I think I agree, especially, you know, I'm a big Goggins fan.
Yep. I didn't know who he was till I met you. Shout out to you, by the way.
So when he started his journey to lose 100 pounds in a month, right, he recognized that I no longer want to be where I'm at.
Yep.
Right? These are the things that I have to do. And he calculated it out. He got in his lab. He figured out how to lose the weight in a very short amount of time. And he understood what was going to be required of him to achieve that goal. And then he put in the work. And we've talked plenty about putting in the work, so we're not talking about that today. But really more so, visionaries, I just want to encourage you to, like, take the time to look at who you are, where you are against where you want to be, and who you want to be in the future. Like, ultimately, that's what this show is all about, right? Helping people self-identify where they are against where they want to be.
That's in this entire discussion we're having about pivoting, that's a big part of it. Like, you know, we've talked with plenty of people offline, and they're like, man, the first step to doing whatever it is you want to do is just being self-aware enough to be like, okay, this is where I am versus where it is I want to get to, or this is who I am versus who it is I actually want to be. And are you aware enough to even recognize that part of it before you even take that first step? Are you secure enough within yourself to say, all right, here's where I am. That's where I'm trying to go. But if, because some people are not even aware enough to have that real conversation with themselves. Should be
listening to this show.
Correct, absolutely.
And if you're not, though, that's when you got to get in your lab.
Yep.
You know, that's what I think. And so I've been, you know, we got a guest in the audience today. That's where I've been over the last 3-4 months or what have you, is really pressing in on that, because the greatness that is in each and every one of us, right? I think it does require the right fertilizer or water, you know what I mean? Like, you have to give it, you know, you talked about the Bible, right? Like, the Bible always talks about seed time, harvest, right? Mm-hmm. You got to plant the seed, You got to give it the time, and you got to give it the harvest, right? And we talked with Dr. Jake Taylor Jacobs about, that whole concept of seed time harvest. And inside of that, you need to understand where you are placing your seed. It's got to be on fertile ground. I could put a seed on top of the pavement. It's never going to grow.
Or as our buddy Mr. Rayford said a couple weeks ago, are you even in the right environment?
100%.
Are you aware enough to realize, okay, am I even in the right environment, or in our world, are you even in the right room to where you will be able to grow and flourish?
So when you're going through that phase, right? Like that's when those are the questions that you're asking, that you should be asking yourself. Am I in the right room? Am I in the right environment? Am I surrounding myself with the right people, right? I identify the gap of where I want to be versus where I currently am, and understand that where you currently are is never the end, right? Until, like what you talked about, failure in terms of quitting, right? And then obviously, what are you listening to? What are you putting inside of your mind, right? What are you filling yourself with on a daily basis? If you're looking at, and this is no discredit to any entity, but like if you're watching the news and you're watching things that are not going to help level you up, you're probably going to be in the same spot 3, 5, 7 years from now.
Yeah, I mean, they're like anybody, right? There's a time to play. Like, Lord knows I work too much, but there's a time to play. There's a time to where you can, as you say, take a respite for a hot second. But whatever you're trying to do, the majority of your energy needs to be directed towards that.
Yeah.
If it's not, then you're not, you don't put things on people, but if the majority of your energy is not directed towards that, you're sadly mistaken if you think that you're going to get there.
It's interesting because it's everybody knows the story, and I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago about Blockbuster and Netflix, right?
Yep.
Blockbuster was the king, fat and happy. Internet comes around, they did not adjust. They didn't change, right? They didn't pivot. And it was well within their scope, well within their range.
And it would have been an easy lift for them if they'd have just figured something out like, hey, as opposed to turning Netflix into competition, why don't we just figure out a way to work with them?
Or, you could do that, or you could do what they're doing, leveraging the technology that they had access to. And you already had the majority share. Like no one.
You already had the inventory.
Yeah. And then you have the red boxes and all this other stuff that came out later on. But y'all cornered the market. Everybody on Friday nights was hitting up Blockbuster.
Yep, indeed.
And it's same thing. I was, sometimes I listen to sports radio, and I think a couple months ago, very similar situation with like Sports Illustrated, right? Which for our age, like people that are our age or older understand, like that was the joint, right?
That was the end all be all of all sports magazines.
You talk about Tyra Banks on the beach on that. That's like, oh my God, bro! Like
I actually read the sporting articles, but I understand what you're saying.
I did not. That thing was sticky too.
Oh my gosh!
No, I'm kidding. But you got Sports Illustrated, who really again kind of cornered the market in terms of its reach and what they did, but ESPN comes along and they digitize everything, right? And Sports Illustrated could have been ESPN way before ESPN was who they thought they were. They just didn't have the foresight to pivot.
Yeah, it's what happens is, and this goes into pivoting / not getting comfortable. And I talked about it a couple weeks ago too. Like, it's cool to have that cruising altitude, but never think that you've completely got it figured out. There's always, at a coach in college, God rest his soul, used to always say, the biggest room in the world is a room for improvement. And I know people who are dominating in their field. Like, they are top of the food chain. And even they are constantly trying to learn more about what it is that they do. And it's, like, hey, Ryan, look, I got enough assets to where I'll never have to work for anybody again, and I'm cruising at a couple $1,000,000 a year. But they are constantly seeking more and more information and knowledge. They're constantly trying to grow about how to do things better, how to refine their process, which if your process is generating a couple $1,000,000 a year profit in your pocket, you're doing pretty good already. But even they are consistently looking at their model and like, okay, I can tweak this here. I can tighten this up here. like always pushing the buttons and playing with things to make it as good as you possibly can make it on a daily, monthly, quarterly, yearly basis. I mean, it never stops until you're done. Yeah. Right.
I mean, that in and of itself is growth mindset.
Absolutely.
Versus, having a limited mindset. And that was the whole, impetus of why we got started with doing the show. We worked together a couple of years ago with a particular company. And even them, right? Understanding that, hey, it's time to pivot. The trajectory doesn't necessarily, the end goal doesn't change, just the trajectory in which to get there does, right?
Yeah, it's we all start off on a path, and you have your beginning, you have your starting point, and you have that destination. And yeah, like anybody, hey, a straight line, cool. That would be awesome.
Doesn't exist,
and the game ain't set up that way.
Yeah.
If it was just all green lights in life, what fun would that be? The glory is in overcoming the obstacles. The glory and the looking back and being like, man, I did that, is in having to figure out an alternative route, because the original way you planned on getting it done, at some point along the way you encountered an obstacle or a detour, or you had to back up a couple steps and go around, or you had to figure it out. That's where the joy of it is. If you just looked up and, okay, we made a plan, and 6 months from now we're going to be here, and it was just a straight shot and nothing, and you encountered no obstacles along the way. Yeah, it'd be a lot less stressful and it'd be easy, but easy come, easy go. And where's the fun in that? I mean, we're both football players. Like, if you just lined up every single week and you knew for a fact the guy on the other side can't do anything with me, like he's got no shot. Okay, that's cool, but the real fun, and for real competitors like ourselves, the real fun is lining up against somebody who's your equal and dominating that guy.
Yeah, I think we all search for how we want to understand how we measure up.
Yeah.
Right? I think back when, being in high school, you're so limited with, either the athletes that are in your school, and the athletes that are in your school district,
in your area,
and then your state. And then we started traveling and going, we had schools in our district go to Florida. We went to
right when 7-on-7 popped off.
Yeah, and then all this stuff is going on, right? But you're so limited in that mindset, and then you go off to college, and all of a sudden you got a guy from Oregon, another guy from Maine, another person from Nevada, and it's like, oh, there's other people. So if you're that true competitor, how do I really stack up?
Mm-hmm.
Am I a big fish in a little pond, right? How does this fish navigate new waters when the pond's bigger, right? Am I going to be eaten up by, another large fish?
Yeah, it's good. I'm glad you we were debating on where we were going to go with this today, and I'm glad that you chose this route.
Yeah, I just think it's important because, like I said before, understanding that when you pivot doesn't mean that you fail.
No.
Right? Understanding who you are against where you want to be and the gap that exists. Now, and what you were talking about are what are the tactics that I need to do. One of my big things is, having some time of reflection, right? Which is where you really do the self-inventory work, right? You're doing that work within that time period. And then you come out with said game plan, and you're still aimed at the same target, just a different way to get there, right? I think it's so important, man. And then obviously with the book that I'm reading, or books that I'm reading, looking at like who they were and where they are now, like that's great. All the success is fantastic, right? But the mentality behind like, hey, I can't keep doing what I've been doing. I'm going to be, in 50's case, since we're talking about the book, I'll be dead or in jail. This isn't a long-term plan. I think one of the bigger lessons in life that I've learned is the ability to take the experiences from a previous experience and leveraging that into the next one, right? And I think that's what everyone that we mentioned have done that, right? They've understood that I can no longer be and function the same way that I was before, but my trajectory and my target still hasn't changed. I'm just going to shift over or pivot this direction and go pivot this angle and go this direction.
Yeah, I think, forgive me, the fat kid's coming out of me. You know, for a long time,
He said, I love you like fat kid love cakes.
There you go. You know, for a long time, people made pancakes with just flour and sugar and eggs and milk. Then all of a sudden, vegans and we got health conscious, and now there's all type of terms of all different types of alternative flour to make pancakes. Somewhere along the way, somebody said, you know what? I think I can do this a better way and probably healthier. And like I said, now we've got
options.
Yeah, we got options. It's still a pancake. It's just a different way of getting there. Just a different way of getting there. I mean, my wife and I had discussions all the time about like,
Did y'all
okay,
have pancakes today?
No, because Zuri ate the last batch yesterday before school. Truth be told, got a refill on that. But my wife and I had this discussion all the time in regards to, okay, well, where do we want to go in the next X amount of years? And part of it is the yin and yang between man and woman. It's we realize we want to get to the exact same place. We want to get to the exact same place. We are in lockstep, but we have
that's a good thing in a marriage.
Indeed, but we have healthy debates on the exact route we're going to take to get there. And so that's always, and I'm married to a therapist, so there's some very heavy conversations that are had in my house from time to time. And so it's life though. It's life. Like if you just drew it up and it just happened as is, it just easy. Like what's the fun in that? What's the fun in, you look at people like, man, we've been married for 25, 35, 50 years. Absolutely. Those couples have gone through some type of struggle or upheaval or, somebody lost a parent or a stress test or whatnot. How do you know what you're really made of? How do you know what you're really made of? And we see it all the time in football and basketball teams. Like, oh, they burned in the regular season. They housed everybody. Then it gets to playoff time and like what happened?
Cowboys? Are you talking about?
I don't want to do that. I don't want to bring the mood down, but
kind of sounds like that's exactly what you're doing.
I don't want to do that, but I mean, the NBA playoffs coming up. We're going to find out how tough really are Oklahoma City and Minnesota. Because Denver's just sitting there like, man, we're just waiting for the playoffs to start. But we're going to find out a lot about Oklahoma City and Minnesota in a couple of weeks. We're going to find out what they're really made of. Because those two teams are uber young, and they're going to have to play some teams with those wily veterans. Again, what's the fun in just burning through everybody and there's no challenge?
One thing I will tell you, as a sidebar, is that boy Anthony Edwards,
he's a problem.
He is a problem.
He is a problem.
And that is a competitor.
Yeah, he is the dog of all dogs. He doesn't care.
He would hate to lose Connect 4.
Yeah, he doesn't care. I mean, that is a guy, like, I imagine when he was playing on the playgrounds and dirt roads in Georgia or wherever he's from in Georgia, he didn't care if they were playing on a dirt court, hardwood floor. Like, is there a ball? Is there a net? Let's go.
All right, so what if my internal mechanism is not geared in that fashion? I'm okay with status quo.
If you're okay with status quo, that's fine. This is why we have the regular rank and file and 9 to 5 in America. That's okay. But if you're okay with status quo, you can't, on the other hand, say, man, I want to do more. Well, you're okay with status quo, so what are you worried about doing more for? Mm-hmm. If that again, there's nothing wrong with status quo. Like we need status quo. Like that keeps some semblance of balance, if you will, in society. But you can't if you're cool with status quo, you can't be complaining about things that those who operate outside of status quo are involved in. You can't complain about it. You don't want to sit at that table.
No, that was a fantastic response, because that's kind of what I'm thinking. Is like, visionaries that are listening, or what if I don't want to be X, Y, and Z? I wanted to make sure we have something in there for those people. And I agree with you. Like, everybody ain't built the same. Everybody doesn't want the same thing. Mm-hmm. And that's the beauty of life, right? But for those that are looking to better themselves, I think intrinsically we all want to be better than we were before, right? The day before.
What's our man Eric Thomas was his famous speech like you gotta be willing to you gotta be willing to succeed as bad as you want to breathe.
Yeah.
If you're trying to do something that is, my hat's been like this the whole time, you didn't say anything. Good Lord.
I mean, it fits with everything else you got on.
Whatever, man. If you're just cool with status quo, again, there's nothing wrong with that. There's literally absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if you're trying to be great and leave a mark and do something that really like leaves your nominal footprint on your environment, your society, your sphere of influence or whatnot, you're going to have to get outside the box a little bit. You're going to. I mean, I just finished the Patriots documentary like 2 days ago. Tom Brady started off as status quo. But then you look behind the curtain, and that dude was maniacal about taking care of himself. He was maniacal about being competitive at everything. You're talking about a guy who, if he was losing a video game, would stomp on the floor so the video game machine would reset itself. Or he would hurl the game controller through like a wall. Like, you have to get, if you're really trying to do something great, just being everyday status quo, I mean, outside of what Tim Duncan, who's just consistently great over time, I don't know of anybody that's off the top of my head who's just every day ho hum ho hum.
Duncan in that, because we are not privy to the work that he put in behind closed doors.
Indeed.
I don't care who you are, you don't become that great based off of talent alone, exclusively, right? There's effort, there's work. And it all calls back and ties back into understanding who you are versus where you want to go and who you want to be, right? So, Tim Duncan, where's he from? The Bahamas,
the Virgin Islands.
Yeah. However old he was, 11 years old or whatever, I guarantee you he was in there working. Now, was his work ethic the same as at 19? The same that was at 23? Probably not, right? And even then, that's another fantastic example of understanding how to pivot, right? I got to put more in. I got more at stake.
Yeah. I saw LeBron talking about it literally 2 days ago.
Read it?
Yep. And he was talking about, what it takes to be great. And he was like, it's like an unwavering level of discipline and commitment. He just kind of described like a regular work day. He's like, I'm going to be up at 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to be in the gym. I'm going to go for a couple hours. I'm going to get something to eat. Treatment, therapy, whatever it calls for that day. I'm going to come home. I'm going to take a nap, get up, do what I got to do with my kids and my family. If I got time to do that, if there's not a game, and I'm going to do the same thing the next day for an extended period of time throughout a calendar year.
Yeah, it's what Kobe talked about with his Mamba mentality and learning how to get the most out of the 24-hour day, where he would get up at 4 o'clock, he'd get his workout in, he'd be done by 7, come home, get the kids ready, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. He's back at another workout session, 9:30 after dropping the kids off at school. Go until about noon, 1 o'clock, take a nap, take a break, do what he's got to do, come back again at 5 or 6 and knock it out. And he did that for years. That maniacal.
That's the word. It's maniacal.
Yeah,
it's maniacal. It's delusional, quote unquote. It's obsessive. But again, we're talking about people who are not cool with status quo. Like, I mean, you think about everything that LeBron has done since we've known of this 15, 16-year-old kid from Akron, Ohio. And kudos to him, because I think at a very early age, he probably realized, one, the talent he's been blessed with, but just everything that would be available to him. If I do what I'm supposed to do on the court, here's everything else I get access to. I think he understood that at a very early age.
I'm going to disagree.
I'm listening.
I think he realized it when cameras and ESPN started to show up. I shouldn't say started to show up, but around that freshman, sophomore.
Yeah, I mean, he was on Sports
school.
Illustrated like 16, 17 years old, and I think at that point there had to be somebody around who said, "Hey, look, dog, if you do this right, you are going to do things and accomplish things that nobody you currently know will be able to. Like, you're going to go to you are going to operate in truly uncharted territory."
Yeah, I think maybe some of those conversations probably were directed towards him or had, But I think for him, it was like, man, I just got to get my mom up out of here.
That's where it started.
Yeah, exactly. That's where it
started.
But to get to that maniacal, like you got to have the taste of success and realize, okay, I know where I came from, and I don't want to ever go back. Right?
CGB can't go back.
Yeah, that's when that maniacal, like, okay, Kobe, what are you doing for your off season? You know, Jordan, what are you doing? Shaq, what are you doing? So on and so forth. Since we're talking about LeBron, you know, but if you can find people that are in your field, in your industry, like, you know, one of the first things I did when I was working at the company we worked together is I wanted to know who was the most successful person in the organization, right? And then I would try to model my game, my professional game, after them.
You take bits and pieces, and
100%,
and then you put it into your own little formula,
own little thing, just like you're baking a cake or whatever, right? But then I started to literally target people. Okay, I'm gonna go after Mosley. Month 1, month 2, okay, I got Mosley. Now I'm gonna go after Bob. Month 1, month 2, month 3, okay, I got him. And I literally, bro, I remember this. I'm targeting people, and that was the attitude. But even then, you know, I want to rewind the tape a little bit and go back to the idea that, you know, hey, I realized this is not what I want to. This is not where I want to be within my station in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
From a financial perspective, the access to things like you were talking about with LeBron. So what is it going to require of me to get out of said position? Okay, well, we got to get in the lab. We got to work, right? I've pivoted, obviously, since then. And I also don't want to paint this picture that every pivot works.
No.
Right? Sometimes you're on the right track and you feel like you need to pivot, and maybe it could be premature. Maybe you make the wrong pivot move. Maybe you pivoted a little, you know, to the right when you should have pivoted a little bit more to the left, right? Or whatever that situation is. And so, you know, I'm on the heels of coming off of some pivots that were the wrong moves, right? And again,
sometimes it's just life.
It's just life, and those are lessons. And I'm going to give shout out to you for you know, I don't want to say teaching me, but making me aware of, you know, just because you did not succeed does not mean that you failed, you know. And so I don't want to paint this picture that, all you got to do is pivot and you're going to get exactly where it don't always work like that. But then you get up, you dust yourself off, and you get back in your lab, which is exactly where I'm at, and then you go back to work again. You refine the process. I think that was one of the words that you said. It was refinement, right? Like, you got to cultivate, refine. You got to till the ground. I mean, it's nonstop. And so, you know, whether you decide to remain status quo, again, nothing wrong with that, or if you're just going to go after it, whatever your it is a process. And inside of that process, there will be pivots that have to be taking place. And so in retrospect, like I don't want people to look up and say, I'm going in this direction and I'm never going to get off of this track. You can still go in that direction, but maybe on a different track.
Indeed. I agree. Good idea, Chief.
Yeah, man.
Good idea.
Well, I'm glad we got a chance to chop it up, man. We don't, I know, you know, in our sunset season, we really have decided to like spend some quality time with one another to allow visionaries to kind of see what our conversations look like. You know what I mean? And so certainly grateful for you and grateful for the opportunity to chop it up.
Indeed. Much appreciated, Chief.
Visionaries, hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm Cuff with the Vision Lab Podcast.
I'm Mo.
We'll see you guys in a couple of weeks on the next episode. Blessings.